I've been using this for a while now, so I figured I would share some thoughts. I went into this with one main question. Can a wire-free robot mower actually hold a clean boundary and cut in a way that looks intentional, or is it going to wander and leave weird missed patches? After living with it in a normal yard routine, I think it gets a lot right, with a few limits that you should know before you expect too much from it. This mower is for someone who wants the lawn kept under control on a schedule, without putting down perimeter wire. It makes the most sense for a small to medium yard where you can give the base station and the charging dock a decent view of the sky. If your lawn is mostly open with a few trees, some beds, maybe a fence line, and you want the grass to look consistently trimmed without spending your weekends pushing a mower, that is the use case. If your yard is heavily covered by trees or you have narrow corridors that are basically a tunnel of leaves overhead, you can still use it, but you should expect more pauses and a little more babysitting. What makes this one different is the way it figures out where it is without a boundary wire. It uses satellite positioning with a small reference antenna you set up in your yard to correct location drift, and it also uses cameras to recognize what it is seeing, so it can keep its bearings when satellite signal is not ideal. On top of that, it has internal motion sensing, so if it loses signal for a short moment, it still has a sense of how it moved. In real life, that combination is the whole story. Any one of those systems by itself can struggle in a typical yard. Together, it is more stable. Physically, it is compact and low to the ground. It feels like outdoor equipment, not like a fragile gadget. The plastic does not feel flimsy. The wheels have enough grip for normal lawns, and it is light enough that I can pick it up and move it without feeling like I am wrestling a heavy machine. I have hosed it off to get rid of clippings and dust, and it has held up fine. I still try not to blast water directly into seams, but for basic cleaning, it has been simple. Setup is one of the big reasons people look at a wire-free mower, and it is mostly straightforward here. You place the charging dock where it has room to pull in and out cleanly, and you place the reference antenna where it can see the sky. Those two placement choices matter more than the app screens. I spent more time walking around my yard looking for the best antenna spot than I spent on the rest of the setup. Once I picked a spot, the app guided me through the steps in a way that made sense, and I did not have to bury anything. Mapping is where you decide how smooth your experience will be later. If your lawn has clear borders like a fence edge, a clean curb, or a defined boundary, you can lean on automatic mapping. In my yard, I used a mix. I let it handle the simple edges, then I switched to manual guidance around the tricky parts, like curved beds and areas where grass blends into mulch. Doing that once saved me a lot of small corrections later. The part I actually liked is that the map editing is not a one-time thing. When I moved a planter and changed the shape of one bed, I did not have to start over. I just edited the boundary on my phone and kept going. Daily use is simple. I set a schedule, it leaves the dock, it cuts, and it comes back when it needs to. The mower follows organized, parallel lines instead of wandering randomly. That alone changes how the lawn looks. The pattern looks deliberate, and it helps avoid that chaotic, patchy look some older robot mowers leave behind. It also slightly changes the cutting angle on different runs. In my yard, that helped reduce repeated wheel tracks, especially in softer spots where the ground stays damp a little longer in the morning. Cut quality has been consistent as long as I treat it like a maintenance mower. If I run it regularly, it keeps the grass short and the clippings fine, and the lawn looks even. If I let the lawn get too tall and then send it out, it slows down and it can leave heavier clumps in thick sections. That is not really a flaw as much as the reality of a smaller robotic cutting deck and a lighter robot. I learned quickly that the best way to use it is to start with the lawn already in decent shape, then let the robot keep it there. Edge cutting is good, not perfect. It has modes that let it ride closer to borders, and it can get near the edge in a way that reduces how much trimming I do. On straight borders, it is pretty convincing. On certain edges, like an uneven stone border or spots where the ground drops off sharply, it naturally plays it safe and leaves a little strip. I still do a quick touch-up with a trimmer once in a while, just less often than before. On slopes, it has handled my yard without drama, and I do have sections that are not flat. I would not call my yard extreme, but it has a couple inclines where a cheap robot would spin its wheels. This one stayed planted and kept moving. The bigger issue was not traction. It was satellite and camera visibility in certain corners. Near a wall and under a tree canopy at the same time, I have seen it pause, wait, and then continue once it relocks its position. It did not usually lose the job or drive off course, but it did add time. That lines up with what I would expect from any system that depends on a clear view of the sky some of the time. Obstacle detection has been mostly reliable. It recognizes people and pets well enough that I do not worry about it bumping into my dog at full speed. It slows down and goes around, or it stops and reroutes. Small objects are more hit or miss, like a toy left in the grass. I still try to keep the yard reasonably clear, because no robot mower is great at dealing with random clutter. The safety behavior when lifted or tilted has worked properly in my testing, and that is something I always check because it is not optional for me. I also notice the night behavior. It pauses mowing at night to avoid wildlife. In practice, that means I do not schedule it late, and I prefer early daytime runs anyway. There is a rain sensor too, and it has returned to the dock when weather turns. I still avoid running it in heavy rain because wet grass tends to clump, and I would rather not make the mower work harder than it needs to. Battery behavior is the kind of detail you only appreciate after a few weeks. This one returns to charge when it gets low, and then it resumes where it left off. In real use, that means I do not think about runtime. I just see the lawn getting done in sections. The only time it becomes noticeable is if your lawn is near the upper limit of what it can handle, because then you might see it do multiple trips. For my yard, it feels like a normal routine rather than a project. The mobile app is where most of the control lies. I use it for scheduling, starting and stopping, choosing zones, and making quick edits. The multi-zone support has been useful. I have areas that I want cut more often and areas I want cut less often, and I can set that up without much effort. If you have separated patches that the mower cannot drive between, you will be physically moving the mower. The software will basically tell you that, and I appreciate the honesty. It is not magic. You either create a passable connection or you carry it. Software stability has been mostly solid for me, but I have seen small quirks. One time after an update, I had to reconfirm a section of the map, because it behaved like it was being cautious near a border it used to handle fine. It did not wipe everything, but it was enough to remind me that this category lives and dies by firmware. My advice is to install updates when you have time to watch the first run after, not right before you leave town. Noise is low enough that I run it during the day without thinking about it. It is not silent, but it is not the kind of sound that takes over your yard. The bigger benefit is that it is just less disruptive than a gas mower. Maintenance is also simple. I keep the underside reasonably clean and swap blades when they start to look worn. If you ignore basic cleaning, you will get buildup, and that can affect cutting. A few minutes every so often keeps it behaving normally. So overall, my impression is that the T1200Pro is a practical wire-free robot mower when your yard conditions match what it needs. It does a good job of staying on track. It cuts in an organized pattern that looks tidy, and the app tools make it easy to adjust when your yard changes. The limits are also real. It still likes a decent sky view for the reference antenna. Heavy canopy can cause pauses, and you may still do occasional edge trimming depending on your borders. If you expect it to take down tall, neglected grass like a full-size mower, you are going to be disappointed. If you want steady, regular maintenance cuts with less effort, it fits that job well. If you have been using a wire-free mower in a yard with lots of trees, I would be curious how your experience compares. So leave a comment and tell me what worked and what did not. Subscribe to the channel if you want more real-world tech reviews like this, and thank you for watching.